Welcome to the Berman Golf Podcast, where we're helping golfers over the age of 60 increase distance off the tee so that they can hit shorter irons into the green. Yeah, baby. You can visit us at bermangolf.com for more information and get ready. This is going to be a fun one. And we're rolling, baby. The Long Balls Golf Podcast. Dr. Jake Berman here with a very special guest today. He is in tears right now. He had no idea that was going to be my intro.
Man, that is good. I'm not surprised either, though.
We got Mr. Loren David on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate this. This is going to be a fun conversation.
Definitely.
So Loren is one of the OGs, the original gangsters of TrueSpec. He's been there since the beginning.
Yep.
Since the beginning. So and Loren is currently fitting out of our Bonito location. So I'm on one side of this place, is 5,500 square foot facility.
Yeah.
So I've got one side of it. I got one hitting bay, and on the very other side of it is Loren. He's on the other side of it.
Yep.
And I wanted to, first of all, have you share some great stories. I'm sure you've got plenty of good stories. We want to talk about how TrueSpec got started and why TrueSpec is becoming the leader in custom golf club fitting in America, and why it was such an easy relationship, marriage, whatever you want to call it, between Berman Golf and TrueSpec moving into the same facility.
Yes.
How's all that sound?
Sounds great. It's a lot. I hope they're ready for that.
Should I do the intro again? And we're rolling, baby.
That's like 3 intros for 3 different combos, but yeah, it'll be good.
Cool. So I guess let's just get started right out of the gate and tell people about TrueSpec, in the sense that TrueSpec, correct me if I use the wrong terminology, TrueSpec sets itself apart from other club fitters because it's agnostic. It doesn't really have brand loyalty, meaning that the way that I describe it to people is they're going to put 5 different shafts and 5 different club heads, mix and match it, and whatever gives you the best objective results, that's your combination.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes. I always extend the definition a little bit further because there are various other people that have come in the industry over the last 10, 12 years that also try to do, or aim to do is a better word, that agnostic experience. And now you have various things that go into it, down to even how we even build a demo, right? So there's not even a lot of people that realize that it not only matters what you're testing and where you're testing it, but it also matters how you're testing it. So the actual build of the demo, whether it be an iron or a driver, there goes into a lot of thought, a lot of processes that affect weighting. You know, we're really keen with our demo team on making sure that the clubs will replicate as close to the weight of your actual produced built product as possible. And there's a lot of brands that would be looked at as competitors to ours that just do not do that. You know, they can be 4 or 5 swing weights heavier in testing than what you're getting in your finished product, right? And so again, kind of above a lot of golfers' knowledge, but that is a big key to our success, is that we've not only taken it upon ourselves to be agnostic to brand, that's both shaft and head. A lot of people only think of that in terms of the head you're using, but also in terms of shaft. There's so many very niche shaft brands that are out there. I mean, you could bring in 20 brands on your wall if you wanted to, right? So it's going above and beyond, doing agnostic testing, not just agnostic fitting, seeing what lightweight brands are best, what medium weight brands are best, where our demo is hitting the best at all locations, but then also, you know, Florida locations are going to be slightly different than maybe Oregon or, you know, California or Chicago. You know, there's going to be different needs in those. And I think that overall we do a really good job of covering what we offer and then also how we're applicating that.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So just to give all the listeners a quick snapshot on my progression of knowledge in this space. When I first started golfing, I couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. I couldn't hit a ball out of my own shadow. It was just brutal. So everybody gave me accurate advice at that time. They said it's not worth getting fit because you don't have a reproducible swing.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I did have a reproducible shitty swing,
Mm-hmm.
it still wasn't appropriate to get fit because the goal was to get a reproducible semi-quality swing.
Correct.
Because it's a process. You don't want to go through the fitting process and spend a lot of money on clubs if it's just going to be irrelevant for you 3 months down the road. So what I found, and I'll never forget this was actually one of the first times that it was some type of event that you guys had in the Bonita location. This is way back in the day. This was when Ryan was still in town. Mm-hmm. And it was some event, and I remember bringing in my 7-iron, and I hit it, and it had something like 10,000 RPMs on it or something like that, and it went decently straight. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that 7-iron just went 135 yards. And Ryan goes, okay, let me do a couple of things. And he came back up with 3 different shafts, 3 different club heads. And brought the spin down to 7,500 RPMs. What's it supposed to be for a 7-iron?
It just depends, right? It depends, but typically you're going to be looking at something from about 6,000 to 7,000, depending on the player.
Okay, so my numbers are not far off from my memory.
Yeah.
So it brought the RPMs down significantly.
Correct.
And the total or the carry increased 15 yards.
Correct.
And I'm going, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
Same crappy golfers, same crappy Indian, different arrow.
Yeah. And that's the hard part for golfers, right? There is something you just touched on, like there is a sweet spot of when you do it. But I will tell you that one of the things I think is important for your listeners is that most golfers are waiting for perfection before they get production, right?
Yep.
And so the idea for me, and this has been for the 15 and a half years I've done it, there's always something that can be modified. And if you're waiting for the perfect thing, the perfect time, the perfect club, you're just going to miss your time, right? And there's things that will happen to you at all times. And so for a lot of people that are 60 and over, you don't want to think that you have to get a certain path or a certain loft consistency or a certain something to do it, right? Because there's 2 things that happen no matter when you come in for a fitting with us at TrueSpec. You're always going to learn something. You're always going to have a better understanding of who you are as just a simple golfer. And you're also going to have a better idea of what your actual distances are. You know, there's about 10% of golfers that come in that actually what they're going to warm up with, I'll say, as a quick note, hey, what club was that? It's a 9. What do you normally hit that, right? I'm not saying that because I'm expecting a certain distance or they should be at a certain distance because they said on their questionnaire that they're a 5 handicap. But it's more about getting them to tell me something that I can then see how close or not they are, right? And that goes back again to what we test on, right? We're using the most accurate data-driven technology in the game of golf. And we are always with no ego aside on switching our launch monitor, switching our process, or switching the way we build a demo, or switching the way we build a club, because we want the golfer to understand that it's our mission to always offer that, right? You're never going to come in and test on something that has been shown indoor or outdoor has some kind of defect or downside, right? Or doesn't calculate something that it should take into account, right? We've never used a monitor that's done that. And any time that we've come into a run-in with that, which we did years back about something we were using everywhere, and we ended up switching our indoor monitor from our outdoor, and now we ended up taking those and making all of them the same. But that was a huge standpoint for the golfing public that comes and uses our services that just shows like we weren't doing this because we had emails of people saying that, why do you use this brand? Because it's shown to not give you as accurate readings indoors. That was something we knew. It was something we saw. And there, at sometimes in golf, there's not always an answer right away. So you have to be patient. You have to be communicating with other like-minded people in our field. You have to be keeping your relationships very open, for someone to tell you about something, and then you got to go taste it and see if it's worth it. And that's always something for the golfer that's coming in that's huge, right? We're never going to put you in a product before you need it. We're never going to not be transparent with the fitting report. We're never not going to give you the data, right? It's all in front of you. So just as like when someone comes in for a Berman golf session, they're not going to not see what their numbers are. They're not going to not see what their club speed started at and what it goes to. They're going to see an accurate form of progression. And you've even had to do that from talking with people like me and Ryan about why it matters to have a recognizable launch monitor and to give good data and to acknowledge that regardless of someone coming into you for no club fitting, right? They're not leaving with a new club when they go see you, but they are wanting to see an idea of this is what my body is capable of producing. And then where can you get me to, Jake? Right?
I love that. Absolutely love that. So we mentioned Ryan a few times. It's Ryan Richardson. He's
correct. He's our current president of TrueSpec.
Yeah, he's out there.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to two things. One of the things that you said is progress, not perfection. And then before I talk about that is the fact that you were one of the deciding factors on me purchasing a new launch monitor because when I first started out, I got a SkyTrack.
Correct.
A SkyTrack is the cheapest simulator on the market, not cheap in a bad quality. It was just,
correct.
It was perfect to get me to where I got to, but it was not good enough to get me to where I wanted to be. And the main reason is because now with this new 3G or GC3, GC3, so it's a 4-site product, a lot more expensive to purchase. However, the quality of the product is insane. It's night and day. And it's allowing me the opportunity to do way more with the objective data than SkyTrack ever allowed me to do. So SkyTrack's not good. It's not bad. It's just not competent enough for where I want it to be. With that said, I do want to go back to the progress versus perfection thing, because there's so many golfers over the age of 60 where it just falls off a cliff. They lose so much distance, they lose so much consistency in a very short amount of time, and then they spend tons of hours on YouTube and the driving range and getting lessons and trying to straighten out a slice or a duck hook, whatever it is. And it could very well easily, correct me if I'm wrong, very well easily be it's the wrong equipment now. Meaning that had you gone to a fitting and got the right equipment in your hands, it would straighten out the slice and you wouldn't have to change your stance, have this giant open stance and this horrendously awkward backswing because the equipment is no longer appropriate for you. Just because you swung a stiff shaft doesn't mean you keep swinging it. Just because you swung a regular shaft doesn't mean you keep swinging it. And here's the best thing. All regular shafts are not created equal.
Correct.
You could have 5 regulars and they're not going to swing the same.
Correct.
So progress, not perfection. You have a horrendous swing. Don't wait to fix your swing. Don't wait to fix the slice to get fit. Go get fit to fix the slice.
Yeah. And there's 2 things I'll give you that are perfect instances that tag along with that. Number 1, the average golfer that comes in, even with someone who, if you know the terminology over the top, which most golfers do, most golfers not only know it, but they do it, right?
They're great at it.
They're great at it, right? They're perfected. So with golfers that have something that is more over the top versus inside out or into out, the reason that an outside in motion causes, number one, so much inconsistency is it's because of, especially in what we're I think both talking about is more in the distance club, right? So it's more in the driver, right? So if we look at just a driver, an outside in to inside out motion is considerably less effective in both consistency and in distance. The reason is because you're using the longest club in your bag with the littlest amount of loft in your bag, right? So the nuts and bolts, to keep it real simple, is the less loft you use in any club, the more side angle can be contributed to. So we use the term spin axis and fitting. That's just simply the tilt of the golf ball and how far right or left it's going, right? So lower loft, if you were to give a player a 7 degree, which they don't even make in most, unless you get into the long drive field, that's going to put considerably more side spin, which is, again, no such thing but spin axis or tilt to the ball, than something that's 12 degrees, right? So looking at both extremes. Most people that are listening to this play somewhere between 9 to 11 degrees, right? That's kind of your sweet spot for most. You're, of course, going to have listeners that play an 8. You're going to have listeners that play a 13.5, and they love it. And hopefully they got fit, right? But going to what you were just kind of jumping on is it's not just the fitting that you're getting the info, and going back to why I was bullish on you getting a better product to measure your golfers on is because golfers at the end of the day, anytime they can get information that gives them a shortcut, not a patch, not a quick fix, not something that's going to work for a round, but a shortcut of understanding, meaning that their understanding of what's actually happening versus what they thought or were told. And that's one of my biggest things that I have a hard time biting my tongue on is, to be frank and real with your listeners, people that come in and see me know that I tell them every time, there's about 85% of information that gets passed to them in any town you're in that is purely falsified, because they're either not up to speed with what you can actually measure, they don't know how to measure it, or both, right? And so one of our values that set us apart, not only as a company, but specifically me individually, and why I've had so much success, not only recreational in beginners, but also in collegiate, professional, working with tour players and everything in between, is because there's just ways above the norm that you can not only explain something and get to the root, which you do a lot in your other businesses as well, but also get them to understand in a way where they now are a better golfer because they're understanding what caused the miss. Most golfers that are out playing right now that are missing and hitting a fade every day, they have no idea why it's caused. Yes, you could have an over-the-top path, but what if we were to tell you in a fitting that we unlock on a GC quad that, look, you're only 2 degrees out to in, but you strike it in the heel 35 millimeters, right? So now all of a sudden the out to in 2.5, that's pushed to the side, because I have a list of 20 tour players that make millions of dollars a year swinging 2.5 over the top, right? So the 2.5 is now not the issue of being outside in. So now all of a sudden in 2023 and beyond, people are going to framework this idea of being out to in versus in to out. It's going to be a much more open conversation. And they're going to be, what my hope and dream is, because I've been preaching this for 5, 6, 7 years, is understanding that strike location is the biggest game that you can win at when you're a golfer. The differential of a pro versus an amateur is club face control and strike location, bar none. It's not the speed. Everyone wants more speed. Everyone can get more speed.
Say it again.
Everyone wants more speed. Everyone could need more speed. Like, go after speed. There's nobody that wants to see a client gain speed more than me, right? Which is why I have so many of my people working with you, right? And it will continue to be that way. If they can be more efficient with their body, more efficient with their swing, feel better on and off the course, and they have a better mental framework around what they're doing, they're going to play better golf, period, right? But it is a point of responsibility that I do feel when I do have an hour or 3 hours sometimes with a client, where I do want them to know that, like, just by fixing the heel contact, you can enjoy the game so much better. And the heel contact for most golfers, probably I'd say 75% of the time, is them just changing their adjustment from the ball. So they're just standing too close, they're reaching for it and don't know it, right? We're creatures of habit, right? And so something that we do so repetitively, it's going to become your norm, whether it's positive or negative. And I know I just gave you a lot, so chew on that.
No, this is so important, because over the past 2 months, I've referenced John Rahm's podcast interview with David Novak, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. It was the week before the Masters where he was defending his title. And this struck me so, it was like a lightning bolt when he said it. When David Novak asked him, what's the difference between amateurs and pros? And he goes, amateurs just don't take enough time to set up properly. Mm-hmm. He goes, if amateurs would just take an extra 30 seconds mm-hmm. to set up properly, mm-hmm. alignment, posture, positioning, mm-hmm. the result would be so much better. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me every single time I say that when I got fit with you. Mm-hmm. You fit me for my driver. Yep. We're out on the driving range, and I'm hitting ball after ball after ball. And one of the best things about this, the foresight, that I didn't realize, is it shows you exactly where you're striking the ball.
Yep, down to a millimeter.
Down to a millimeter, and it shows it right there on the screen. Yeah. And I'm going, what the heck? And you're like, dude, you're too close to the ball.
Yep.
And then you said, back away from the ball. Mm-hmm. Just back away. Mm-hmm. Get uncomfortably far away from the ball. And I got so far away from the ball that it was almost like the club head wasn't even aligned with the ball.
Correct.
And you're like, hit it now.
Yep.
And I'm like, are you effing serious? And I started whacking it from there.
Yeah.
And it was just a positioning thing, but I never would have known that if it wasn't for you showing it to me on the screen, saying, this is where you're hitting the ball.
Correct.
It's because you're crowding yourself. You're too close.
Yeah.
You're going to be longer when you're in motion than when you're at address.
Correct.
And that's why, correct me if I'm wrong, when you look at pros on tour, I hate comparing us mere mortals to pros on tour, but you'll never see them set up with a driver square on the middle of the face.
It's all over. I mean, I even tell people when they play with me, like I would say 90% of my golfers that I work with have an issue hitting more of the heel, and it's primarily because of path and it's because of face angle, more being open and out to in. Myself, who has a tendency when I'm a little bit off of my game, is I swing it too far inside. So my miss, if anything, is I need to actually get closer to the ball so I don't hit it too far on the toe. Okay. So again, very, very rare I get someone that is like my miss of it. But my whole point of bringing it up is that I'm setting up my best drives off the heel of the face. I mean, literally, like if you're behind me, you're going to think I'm going to hit it off the shaft, and I'll hit it plus or minus 2-3 millimeters every time, right? When I do that. Vice versa, the golfers that are hitting it in the heel, there is some amount of the optics that trick them, right? So one thing I always bring in and show people is when you take a driver head and you look at where the dot, every company for the most part right now besides Ping has a mark on the top of their driver that sometimes it's a logo, sometimes it's just an arrow. We've all seen it, right? Those marks are made on those club heads prior to them being, I would say, acknowledged as to what it looks like from the address position. So they're just marked with no shaft in the head, right? When we put a shaft in a driver and we angle it on that angle that we all have, being as far away from the ball as we are, optically, if you're fully aware, the golf ball will look more heel than center if you're using that arrow or that mark or dot or circle, whatever it is, right? So that's the first trap, right? The amateur gets that. They think if I set up in the center, I hit it in the center. Well, that's, that's like just saying if I lift the weight, I get the muscle, right? There's a lot of other things that have to go into that, right? So being that is kind of the brainwash that gets everyone into the trap, that's what also makes it hard when they go to their local professional and ask for a lesson. That pro is even at a disadvantage because it might even look like Mr. or Mrs. is doing it right, and yet they're still yielding and producing a bad result, right? So at the end of the day, just like in your experience, after you do it for a day or 2 days, or sometimes it takes people months, right? It's how programmed and brainwashed your eyes are and your body is to feeling like you're out of position when you're really actually getting into a better position, to really acknowledge that. But the greatest part is that when you're doing it with the refresher and the looking back at what your picture used to be with your strike and looking at it at the end, it's unbelievable what you can show someone. Hey, you're averaging 7 millimeters low and 30 heel. It's literally the worst position you can hit a drive, right? Any engineer that builds these clubs will tell you low heel is the least valuable place to hit a driver, okay? And then you show them where they're hitting at 5 millimeters high and 4 toe, and their ball speed's 11 miles faster. Their spin just went down 1,000 RPMs and their distance is up 40 yards. And their club head speed, for your listeners, did not change.
Oh, thank you.
So that's the sweetest part of it, right? So now, even for the golfer that wants to pick up club head speed, it is really cool to show them that every time, though, where you see their shoulders drop, you see the smile come out, and they have kind of a weary sense of what's happening, but they are very interested and very excited about how that happened. And they are way more bought in 25 minutes later than they were before, right?
Love that. Yeah. Absolutely love that. Yeah. I think that's probably the most consistent aha moment between what you do with your clients and what I do with my clients is in the first 1, 2, 3 sessions, it is not uncommon at all for us to see a 5 to 15 yard improvement with a 7-iron. Mm-hmm. And maximum 1 mile an hour club head speed. And if we use the equation that the PGA puts out or wherever you get off the Dr. Google thing it's your ball is supposed to go 2.8 yards farther for every 1 mile an hour club head speed you gain. And I'm going, well, we just gained 10 yards and the club head speed only went up 1 mile an hour. So and
that's more of what I want people to see. Right?
Yes.
And that's because the strike, the quality of the hit is outweighing just the plain physics.
Exactly.
And that's where you want everyone to be.
Yes. I love it. Yeah. Absolutely love it. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. For more information, please go to BermanGolf.com. That's B as in boy, ERMAN, BermanGolf.com, and check out a ton of stuff that we have there. Or even better, go to our socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. We're even on TikTok. Check us out everywhere. We've got tons of content going out every week. And please give us a thumbs up. Comment on the videos. Let me know what your questions are. Try to shoot holes in this. I'll do whatever I can to help you out the best that I can. Thank you, guys.